Okay, let's talk a little bit about advanced segmentation for consumer marketing, meaning business to consumer, so selling to individuals or households as opposed to other businesses. What we mean by advanced segmentation is going beyond looking at simple or traditional demographics like age and income, and using proprietary segmentation systems to help you do two things. Help you target people who are much more likely to respond to your message, and also once they become a customer of yours, are more likely to spend money as a customer. So let's look at the data to understand how to do that. Here's a sample customer list. All of these names are fictitious, and we're looking right now at a customer ID, a first name, a last name, and 12 months sales revenue to this company that we're doing this work for. And we can look at a couple of different factors here in order to make sense out of this data and do something with it. Now, you might find this type of data for your business in a CRM system, in a point of sales system, in just an Access database or a MySQL database. There's a number of different ways, places to find this type of data, and it's likely if your business has been in business for more than a year that you have a customer list that looks a little bit like this. Maybe the numbers are different on the right depending on the size of widget you sell, but so let's have a look. So we've got these columns of data, and what can we do with this? So the first thing you can do with this type of data to actually make it actionable, something you can actually work with moving forward, is to do simple segmentation, such as let's figure out which customers have spent the most money with us. Okay, so that would be fairly easy to do. We could highlight this list, and we could simply sort by the past 12 months sales, and we can quite clearly see that these folks here have spent a lot more money to the tune of $3,000 plus than these folks down here who have spent $50 or $100. So that's very simple, and we could obviously make some segments out of these based on, let's call it the spend segment. We can call it whatever we want. Let's call it the spend segment. And let's, this might be high, medium, and low. Okay, so basically what we're saying here is we're doing this based upon their spend only. Now this is potentially useful, right? You could maybe put this into your CRM system, or just have a note next to your computer, depending on how sophisticated your company is in terms of this type of thing. And you could say, okay, every time this person calls, we're going to treat them as a higher value customer up here than somebody in the medium or the low. Okay, simple enough. Okay, but let's go beyond that. And the challenge with this type of segmentation is that you can't really extrapolate it beyond your existing customer group. You don't know how to use that data to say, let's go find more customers like them. Okay, so there's two ways to do that that we're talking about today. The first is what we call using traditional demographic data. So we're going to go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this extra segment we created here, because we're going to do a different kind of segmentation. And what we've done here is appended or added some segment categories. We have whether they're male or female, we have income level, and we have their age. And looking at that, of course, we could build some, we could find out, for example, which people tend to spend more money. For example, we can look at, let's try income, for example, and we'll quickly run a pivot table, and we're looking at income levels, and we're looking at sales, and let's look at average sales. Don't worry about how to do this in Excel if you're not comfortable with pivot tables. The point is the result here, and we can look at we can see that looks like this group spends the most with us. Now this group happens to have a higher income than the other groups, but that doesn't necessarily always follow. Sometimes lower income people might spend more with you. It happens quite often. So we can see some differentiation here. So we might say, okay, let's start marketing to people who make more than $60,000 a year, because they are on average bring us more money than more revenue than someone who makes under 20, or even someone who makes 20 to 60. Okay, fair enough. But let's go back here. We can also create sort of a super category out of this. Let's get a little more sophisticated here. And let's call this a traditional, we'll call this our traditional segment. And we're going to just make this one big segment just to see what happens here. And as we do that, we're going to call, so this is its own little segment. And we're going to go ahead and run a pivot on that. Now I've already done that, so I'm going to skip ahead and show you what that looks like in a few minutes. But let's look at one more type of segment and we'll compare the results. So we can also use what we call proprietary segmentation systems. Now what these do is, I'm going to go ahead and minimize these for a second here. They're still there, I'm just going to hide them. And I'm going to open up this proprietary segment here. Okay, this is called advanced segmentation, which uses psychographic. It also combines often demographic and geographic elements as well. And so we've handily added these segments to each group. And let's compare the result when we look at revenue per customer based on this special proprietary segment versus using this combined segment that we used earlier of these three. Okay, and I'm going to skip right over to our pivot tables. These were just the same pivot tables you saw earlier, but I've just done them ahead of time. And first of all, we can see our customer count here. So 503 on both. I'm going to minimize this a little bit in a moment so you can look at both. Let's look at this one first. And we can see that 503 customers. Here's the customer count. Now what I've done is I've looked at, let's look at average revenue first, okay? And let's just sort that by revenue. And what we can see here is that these folks, these males between the ages of 51 and 65 that make this income range of $20,000 to $60,000, that their revenue is much higher on average than the folks down here, males under $20,000 a year, 51 to 65. Okay, they spend the least with us. So that's pretty big. That's a pretty big range of people in terms of the segments, in terms of the revenue spend with us. Okay, and that's important. And also, let's look at the trade area here. You know, 7.2% of our customers belong to this segment, but 8.2% of our trade area belongs to this segment. So that's indexes at under 100. 100 would be average. So that tells me that these people are not, we're not doing very well in terms of getting them as a customer. Now look at these folks down here, they index at 275. So these folks are really, really likely to become our customer because there's only 1.3% of the trade area that has them, but they make up 3.6% of our database. They index at 2.75 times higher than the average. Okay, but let's see if we can get a little bit more leverage out of using these more advanced segments. So we're going to go over here. And similarly, let's look at average revenue per customer. And we can see that this is even higher. Remember the other number we had earlier, the highest number we had was 1,650. But look how much more information we can get out of these guys. Remember, these are the same exact customers, the same 503 customers, but divided up by these advanced segments. And look at how much more of a range there is between the highest and the lowest. So we got a lot more leverage out of that because these are more hyper-targeted. And also, let's look over at the index over here. These customers, these urban fancies, they make up 10.7% of our database, but they only make up 7.2% of the trade area. So they index at 149. Where we get that number is we just take 10.7 divided by 7.2 and multiply that times 100. So again, don't worry about the math. The important part is to understand that they actually index quite well. Now at Mind Ecology, we have a way of combining the value of the customer in terms of how likely they are to become a customer to you, and also their revenue per customer based on the segment. And we can actually then tell you which are the customers out there that are much more likely to buy from you in the future. So again, this is meant to illustrate the power of using these special segments as opposed to just using traditional demographic data in order to append your lists and in order to leverage these lists. Now, one other note: make sure to remember that these psychographic segments over here on the right, they need to be something that you did not just homegrown in your garage. In other words, it has to be something that actually is a real segmentation system out in the marketplace. This is something where you need to be able to pull new data from your trade area in a way that you're able to access these same customers and identify them out in the marketplace as prospects and then convert them. So again, looking at this entire list that we did here, you can see that these folks right here have all been coded with this segment, and we can again look at how much more lift we get in terms of revenue, customer index, for how likely they are to become a customer, and also the average revenue relative to the average across all segments. Much better lift. So this is the power of demand segmentation, and you can make it work for your business.